This is Plastic Adventures.
Hey everybody, it is Steve and my co-host Doug, and we are your PATC Plastic Adventures Toy Community podcast slash show team. And on this week's episode of the Sandbox, which is our catch-all for discussing anything, we're going to take you on a little trip down memory lane with us. We're going to go way back. We're going to see if Doug and I have enough fish oil or omega-3s in our diet to actually remember what it was like at specific times in the 80s, because if there's one thing that you can say about the 80s and toys is it was probably the best time ever that ever was for toys.
Yep.
At least on the retail shelves. There were no collectors back then. So it's not the golden era of Transformers and Masters that we're in now, but it was the precursor to that. And it was the mania and everything being new.
Yep.
Everything had that, oh yeah, that new toy smell.
But
So
it wasn't just toys that were kind of driving stuff in the 80s. I mean, some of the best movies that we've ever seen have come out of the 80s. Some of the best music that we've ever listened to. Some of the best TV shows. I mean, everything was pretty much, I mean, we're not saying that it was all, wonderful. I mean, there were some stinkers in the 80s, right? But the things that hit and the things that stuck with us, they stuck with us for a reason, just because they were just timeless and perfect.
exactly. And I mean, not only do you have these evergreen brands of toys that were born in the 80s, the big ones, the big five that we see out there today, but how many damn Magnum PI reboots and how many, the A-Team tried to come back and
Yep.
MacGyver and just it's this gold mine for franchises that they keep trying to revive and bring back because it's a kind of magic.
It is.
To
It
take a
was a
line
kind
from
of
the
magic.
Highlander, it's a kind of magic. There was
Christopher
just something
Lambert,
cool
that's a
about
good
it.
one.
So we typically talk toys on here, so we'll try and maybe keep it a little bit more toy centric. But how about this? What are some of your earliest toy memories that you had?
So some of my early toy memories revolve around Fisher Price, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've done a pretty good job, I think, of picking up some of the ones that I really liked back then. So I remember the Play Family camper with the little green boat that went on the top of it. I got that. That was one of my favorite ones. And they had like a yellow line that was attached to the front of that, and you could pull it behind you. And that I didn't know what it was called back in the day, but now I know what it's called, and it's called drifting. And I would make that thing drift all over the freaking hardwood floor with that string. Yeah. So back then I had no concept of what that was, other than I can just make this thing speed and turn corners really quick.
How old do you think you were back then when
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 that
you
came out,
remembered this?
I think I would have been almost 4. It wasn't quite 1980 yet, right? Because I remember 1980. Because 1980 was when I think I fully discovered Star Wars. Like, Star Wars came out when I was in 77. I was only 2 years old at that time. So I don't really have a recollection of Star Wars, other than I do have a memory of having the plastic case filled with some Star Wars figures. I was playing with them on my porch, left it on the porch to go inside to get a drink, came back, and they were gone.
That's a tough one.
That memory is going to stick with me until the day I die. But um but Fisher Price was, I think, like my first real, like, into the toy world, where I was playing with a toy and it had a vehicle and it could do something other than just sit there, right? Or make a weird clanking noise. So that's my first real toy memory.
Well, oddly enough, Fisher Price's meat is mine too. Um, the first toy that I really remember playing with was this bulldozer that had rubber tracks.
Ah,
And I remembered, like, distinctly, the driver of the bulldozer had a construction hat. I think he had a blue shirt, and the dude had this mustache and big lantern jaw and like tough looking forearms. And I remember as a kid thinking, dude, that guy is so awesome. Oh man, look at that construction worker. He's so strong, and you got this bulldozer that the tracks move on and you can just push dirt with it. Now, I must have been like 3-ish at the time, like maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. Because I just remember my grandma's place. She lived out in the county,
Okay.
right off of East 26th, right next to 27th there in East Kennewick.
Okay.
So she had like two acres there, and there was a big like kind of abandoned lot next to it. And there was a lot of dirt that led up to the yard. It was sloped, and I would spend countless hours out there with that bulldozer just pushing dirt.
Yeah, that sounds
Just pushing the dirt with that and seeing how tough the construction worker looked, and he had that like really like macho mustache. And now that toy met an awful demise.
Oh, did
Getting
it?
baked out in the sun, and
You never brought it inside, it just stayed outside.
no, the UV absolutely cooked that plastic and made it brittle, and the thing just disintegrated at some point. But man, oh man, that was memory number one, and that had to be probably about like 1982.
Okay.
I was born in 79. Um, my mom did work at St. Vincent de Paul off and on, so things would come through that thrift store, and they would come home.
Right.
And I remembered that, but then, like you said, something happened.
Well, but
Star
right
Wars.
before 1980, though, my next kind of significant toy memory is still Fisher Price related. So it was the Fisher Price Adventure People.
Mm-hmm.
And there was specifically one set that I had that I absolutely loved. It was the red shirt guy with he had like a backpack that he had a sleeping bag that could roll up and fit inside his
cool.
plastic backpack, and then he had like this like a pop-up tent thing. And so I got that, and I remember being super jazzed about that thing. And I pretended, I don't know where I picked it up, but I always pretended he was a mountain climber, and that he would like peg his freaking sleeping bag into the side of a mountain, and he would sleep like pinned into the so I remember taking it out to my grandma's tree and pretending that he was climbing up the mountain and doing that with it. So, and then immediately after that, I think I picked up the deep sea diver with the freaking octopus. Do you remember that set?
Yeah, it's incredibly cool. They started having these like colored plastic.
Yeah.
The deep sea diver didn't have that, but they had
No,
spacemen
he
at
had
the
the
same
old
time.
style like iron helmet
Yeah,
with
yeah.
everything and the big beefy boots and stuff.
Yeah.
And he had like a thing that would like go up into like a flag on top of a balloon. But he had that clear and red octopus that came with him. And I remember that was a bath time toy forever and ever. That was a bath time toy. And I loved it. But then, yeah, you're right. Something else came along that kind of changed the landscape for toys forever and ever and ever in our minds. And that hit in.
Yeah, and that would have been Star Wars.
Oh,
absolutely. I did not get to see Star Wars in the theater. The first movie I saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi.
Oh.
But if you think about it at the time, I would have been about 4 years old, somewhere, 4 going on 5-ish, about 4. But I want to say that Star Wars had some like come on network TV finally. And that was it. My mom working at the thrift store was able to bring home like bags of Star Wars figures that kids had already been playing with
Can you imagine back in the day coming home with bags of Star Wars figures and nobody batting an eyelash too? Just be like, here's some toys here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, vintage figures.
Yeah. Well, they weren't vintage back then. They were garbage and nobody cared.
Oh no. They made so damn many of those things, and I just lost them left or right. We had this, my mom had brought me home a bag of them, and Velveeta, for whatever reason, I remember distinctly, had come in these plastic containers. The Velveeta is covered in foil, and I think to this day it still is.
Okay.
But it came in the box, and there was like this plastic Tupperware thing that was like a free pack-in or something. So, after eating enough of these rubber cheese sandwiches that my mom would make me, yeah, I'm that white and trash. Yes.
We all are at some point.
But anyways, yeah.
So I
I
actually did see Empire Strikes Back in the theater, and I think that that's my earliest movie memory is seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theater. And be absolutely, I remember being absolutely completely enthralled with Cloud City. Like everything about Cloud City was beautiful and perfect to me. I remember wanting to live there. I'm like, I want to go to Cloud City. I want to live there. I want to be where it's always a sunset. It just looks so beautiful. And it was.
I want to drop my stupid toys off the edge and see if they hit the planet underneath.
But I do remember that being my first real movie going experience. And so like the following year, 1981, I had another movie going experience that sticks with me for the rest of my life. So my mom, God bless her. I love her, Mom. If you're watching this, I absolutely love you. And I do not hold you accountable for this dark memory. But in 1981, or was it 1982, when Poltergeist came out, my mom took us to the movie theater to see Poltergeist. And how old was I? I had to have been 6 or 7 at the very least. And I'm watching this movie. And by the way, Poltergeist is one of my favorite movies of all time now.
Yeah.
But when I was watching it in the theater, the part where the freaking monster comes out in the hallway, I was so scared, Steve. I spun around in my chair. And back in those days, the movie projector was behind us.
Yeah.
And projected a very clear picture still of what was happening on the glass where the movie projector was behind onto the theater. So I turn around to try to not see this, and stupid 7-year-old me doesn't close his eyes. I still see the damn thing. And I'm still traumatized. Well, I'm not traumatized by it. I used to be a long time ago. I was scared to hell of that thing, but not anymore. And it's just, oh man, that talk about a great movie memory.
Technically toy related because there were Star Wars figures in Poltergeist.
There were Star Wars figures in Poltergeist.
Yeah. The clown got me. I could never love clowns again.
The clown is my big reason for coulrophobia. I still can't be around clowns.
Well, I was always a few years late to these movies like E.T. and Poltergeist. I did not see them in the theater. I do remember seeing E.T. at a very young age and being very sad when E.T. was in the ditch. And I watched Poltergeist at a young age, and I'm only so screwed up that I collect toys now. So I think something must have been okay.
Well, I think Poltergeist screwed something up for me because when I went to see E.T., I was scared of E.T. That little brown turd with his long freaking neck. That I remember getting home from that movie and my parents telling me, okay, time to go upstairs, go to sleep. And I couldn't even make it up the stairs. I fell asleep on the stairs because I didn't want to go upstairs and turn the light on in my room.
Whenever I rolled over on the bed and I saw wrinkles near the end, I thought E.T.'s hand was under the covers. I used to take and karate chop the wrinkles.
Oh man,
because I
was so realistic looking for a freaking 7-year-old that you're like, no man, I'm scared of E.T.
Yeah, I just like if he wasn't made of pure scrotum, then it wouldn't have been so disturbing. But I mean, he just looks like he's like, gosh, I don't know what animal blended up with nutsack, and that's essentially like, what you end up with E.T.
And that became one of the most beloved movies of all time. Can you believe that?
Yeah,
E.T. just, I guess
well,
man.
Yeah,
but what toys were another movie that came out in 1982, Steve, that both you and I absolutely love, and we're finally starting to get good enough toys for them. Yeah, was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I remember that movie very clearly, and I remember the space battle in the nebula so very clearly that it's still to this day one of my most favorite movies of all time.
Me too. Like I'll be in my pickup. I'm not even listening to movie themes, and I'll just start humming that Dun, 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 dun. And I
Yeah,
want to
I know it.
watch that
Yep.
movie again. Watching the new Picard series and seeing any mention of Genesis Device or Captain Kirk,
Oh.
and I want to watch it again. Again, late to the game on that one. Those earworm things scared the living dog piss out of me when I was a kid. So Star
But they
Wars.
didn't hold back in the movies in those days, and I'm glad they didn't.
I mean, you could handle it. I could watch R-rated '80s movies, and I handled it just fine. I didn't
Yeah.
traumatize me. I mean, gave me nightmares like Terminator, and later RoboCop. Ed 209 was kind of a scary movie monster, but the Predator. I mean, we could just handle
Well,
it for
I
some
think by the
reason.
time '87 came around with the Predator, I was so desensitized by everything in Hollywood that I didn't care.
Yeah. So we're talking Star Wars.
Yep.
And I think I was good to go through '83. I think I remember seeing Return of the Jedi. I watched it twice, once with my mom and once with my cousin and my aunt. And I was like super into Star Wars at that time. And then something happened.
What happened?
Masters of the Universe.
So you were late to that game too.
The cartoons I want to say were what, '84?
But the
Something like that.
toys were 82.
Yeah. Now, I didn't discover the cartoons. I did get the toy first and had no idea what it was. So I was a little bit late, but I mean, if we're 1983, '84, I'm
We're still
5
in the
years
height
old.
of it. I mean, we're
Yeah,
still in its popularity.
yeah, I'm 5 years old at this point,
Yeah.
like I was born in '79. So, I've told the story on here before. Mom buys me the secret present with my allowance at Buttrie's.
Yeah.
I get it, and I'm immediately pissed it wasn't the Darth Vader that I asked for. She takes it out of the package, does the waist twist power punch, and I'm like, Darth effing who?
Who, Darth who? What?
Yep.
No, I'm all about He-Man now.
So I completely just forgot about Star Wars 100%. Into the Masters of the Universe figures. I remember having a Masters of the Universe Christmas where I got the tent, the vinyl tent.
Oh, cool.
I want to say I got the Road Ripper and Fisto and a few of the other figures at that point in time. And I was living high off the hog, off Masters of the Universe. The cartoon was after preschool,
Mhm.
and I would not miss an episode of Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
What was your post Star Wars?
So it would have been Masters of the Universe as well. So in '82, I think I've told the story on here before where my first He-Man was at my 7th birthday, and I got the He-Man Battle Cat 2-pack,
Uh-huh.
and was instantly fallen in love with it. But that was a different Masters at the time. That was before the cartoon had come out, and all I had to go on were the comic books and the coloring books that came out with them. And I think there may have been like maybe one storybook, but there really wasn't much to go on for the mythos. And I was 7 years old, and so this thing came with a comic, and you're opening the package and you're like, comic? Nope, don't care. And just like,
Yeah.
You'd start playing with He-Man however you wanted to play with He-Man.
Yeah, and you just look at the pictures really quick, and then it goes under the bed or wherever into
Yeah,
some
wherever it went when I
oblivion.
was done with it in the 2 seconds that it was out of the package. But He-Man was definitely my very next toy like craze, because it was Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And in Empire Strikes Back, I was one of the lucky kids. I was the only one who had a Millennium Falcon on my street when we were living back in Southern California, and I still have
That's cred.
I still have a picture of this. I'm decked out in full denim. I'm like maybe 4 feet high. I'm wearing my Chucks with nothing but denim, and I got this big Millennium Falcon, and there's like all these other big kids standing next to me holding this Millennium Falcon. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. I know it.
I'm the man.
But immediately after that, though, was definitely He-Man. And I think sometime shortly after that, I did get a Castle Grayskull, because I remember taking one of my in fact, it was the Robot Factory from Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
It had the same color almost the same color as the levels in in Castle Grayskull. And I would pretend that was Master at Arms or Man at Arms work center. Like he was working on new armor and working on guns or whatever. and that was attached to Castle Grayskull. That's just how I played with it. And
Yeah.
then, do you remember Crystar?
I did. My mom ended up working at Kmart for a while, and she brought me a Crystar home from Kmart. I thought that was just for about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah,
That was the bee's knees.
but
The Masters
there
was
was a
my
green
muse.
guy in Crystar, called Warbo, and back when I was little, he was the guy that was the spirit of Castle Grayskull because he was green, and anything green belonged to Castle Grayskull when I was a kid. So
Yeah, I had Crystar, and then I had the guy that looks like he's made of crunchy Cheetos,
yeah,
Magmometus or whatever his name was.
Magmometus.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, but that was super short lived. It
it
was like
was. It wasn't.
I had Masters toys, and I just happened to get Crystar, and it was super cool with the helmet and the shield and the crystal sword. Lost all of them instantly. Uh, but
But then something else happened though after Masters of the Universe.
but something happened,
But something
and
happened, and it was big in like a big way,
mhm.
and that was GI Joe.
Oh, so you had GI Joe next?
I had
Yes.
GI Joe next, and my very first GI Joe was Short Fuse,
Uh-huh. Great
and
figure.
I remember getting this and just going, "What the heck? This is the freaking coolest toy I've ever seen. You can bend his arms, you can bend his legs, you can stick him in your pocket, you can do, I mean, seriously." And then when you find out that there's more of them,
Uh-huh.
like something clicks in the little boy brain at about 8 years old. And if you're like, "Hey, you can collect them all," well, don't say that, because now I want them all.
Yeah. Yep. I had an encounter with GI Joe. I didn't even know what it was when
Oh
I was
yeah.
still hot into Masters of the Universe. We moved into this little trailer for rent down the road from my grandma. I probably told this one before, but we were out playing in the yard, and my aunt found a stalker. He was
Oh,
hidden in the overgrown grass,
oh, that's
a
right. I
straight
remember the
arm,
story.
yeah, straight arm stalker. And rather than give it to the kid who loves action figures and toys, my toddler sister gets it for some reason. So
Ant
I didn't even
fail.
really know what it was though, right? So I'm still hardcore Masters.
Mhm.
And I think I think the two of us had two different turns there. I mean, we might have been like a year or so apart in where we were at, but uh I was kind of oblivious to GI Joe. I was not oblivious to something that happened on a Saturday morning, and that was called Transformers.
Oh yeah, no. Immediately after finding out about GI Joe, uh, I had well, I should say it was close to before Transformers, because my initial experience with Transformers was the non-Transformers that came from Japan, because we were, like I said before, we lived in Southern California. My dad was in the Navy, and so that meant a lot of other people who were in the Navy coming to live in our neighborhood from all over the place as well. So we had families that were just serving in Japan, coming over and coming back to the States, and them, of course, bringing the stuff with them that they had from Japan, something really cool called Diaclone. And
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at these toys going, these are freaking cool. And then the very next year, I see something called Transformers, and they're exactly the same thing. So it's it was I consider myself lucky to be able to have seen and played with pre-Transformers before they were Transformers. But it did not have any less of an impact, Steve. I had to have them.
No, and I think GoBots were on the market ahead of Transformers,
Ah.
but they weren't really on my radar. And when I saw the first episode of More Than Meets the Eye, I about crapped my pants. I couldn't sit still. I was up pretending I was a transformer while the cartoon was on, and as soon as that thing went over, I was out that door like I had a rocket pack. I mean, just lit it up under me, and I was out in my grandma's yard playing and
You
pretending I
didn't
was the
need to meet
Transformers.
Transformers to be playing Transformers.
No, and I do remember at that time my mom had brought me a bag of Hot Wheels cars, and I was pretending the Hot Wheels cars were the Transformers underneath the mulberry bush in front of the house, down in the dirt. I had a white cab over engine semi that I pretended was Optimus Prime.
Oh,
and there
man.
were a couple of links of chain that I squeezed up underneath the chassis to make it look like little arms.
Oh, no way.
I stood it straight up, and I had these little arms, and I was playing Transformers with the
That's cool.
yeah. I was so into Transformers. We would play it at lunch, at recess. Um, this particular point in time, though, there was this massive explosion of imported Japanese robots with
Oh, yes.
Voltron and uh, all of that stuff. Shoot, what's the? I'm spacing out on the name really quick, but it was a line of robots that would like combine into crud. I'll remember it in a minute. Not enough Omega 3s actually, but
What? So
there
it
were
was
just
it wasn't Diacron, or it wasn't anything like that?
Diacron, yes, there was that. And you have a piece of one. And it's like space stations and crap that hook into together to form robots. Uh,
I do?
I just lost all nerd cred. That's fine.
Oh,
But
man, now I'm curious. No, what do I got that I don't think I got?
I remember the 88-cent store because that wasn't the dollar store yet. And I remember knockoff robots and GoBots,
Mhm.
Machine Robo, and it was kind of the winter time, and we were kind of starting to close in on, like maybe a Christmas time. Um, just the smell of the styrofoam.
Mm.
I would get one here or there, and you'd open this package, and the smell of that styrofoam in there, and the shiny plastic, and the heavy metal, the heft that some of these toys had. That's such a distinct smell. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget my grandma's tree covered in tinsel. The house smelled like cigarette smoke and Christmas tree, and the Sears or J.C. Penney's wish books,
Oh, I
and
remember
looking at
going
them
through
for
those for hours.
yeah, ain't no internet. You're
Mm-mm.
you're you're looking at the wish book. And I mean, this was all this like the absolute dawn of Transformers and all the other robots that came along with it. Um, boy, that was probably the most vivid picture of my childhood, was that age of about 7 years, 6 to 7 years old,
Mhm.
um, hitting the robot craze in full force, and those ugly robots that you'd hook them up into a limousine body or something, and then like you break them apart and it had feet, and then you'd put the robot down in the Rolls Royce body and
Yeah.
the breakdancing robots and all that crap. I
Oh, I
mean, that
miss
was
all those.
just yeah, yeah. I mean, that time though, places like Griggs over there in Pasco,
Yeah.
you could go there and they had all of the cheaper import crap, just like a Big Lots does right now. Um, or at least they used to, when you would see all the knockoffs and stuff, and a whole set of combiner transformer knockoffs in different colors, and
Yeah.
it's 14.99 for the Constructicons or whatever.
Well,
Um,
so in Southern California, when I was growing up at this time, so we had there were two things that I absolutely loved back in the day. So everywhere in Southern California, just like you can find like a 7-Eleven now, you can pretty much find an Asian market.
mhm.
And they had everything from Asian food to knockoff t-shirts to shoes, and they had toys, right? And they had these knockoff toys that they would get from whatever supplier they had back in China or wherever. And I would go in there and find like Robotech knockoff toys for $5. I would find like the robot transforming watches that were the biggest craze. You could walk in there and you could find every color you wanted, and they would be like $5.
Yeah.
And I remember that I spent more of my money probably in those Asian markets for my allowance than I probably spent anywhere else. But the other thing that we had that was really cool in Southern California was a thing called Kobe Swap Meet, which it was huge thing. It was kind of like everybody would come from everywhere, and they would sell whatever it is that they had. And you would have things like knockoff t-shirts, knockoff tennis shoes, but you would also have like rows and rows of toys. It's kind of like the Pasco flea market, but think
Yeah.
like 4 times bigger than that, and nothing was the same from vendor to vendor. You could find everything and anything at this place. And yeah, like you would go there on a Saturday, parents would take us there and be like, "You have $12, Doug," and I think I was like, "Oh, jackpot, $12! You know what? I
Yeah,
could walk out
yeah.
with $12. Oh my gosh!" And you would walk out with like bags of knockoff toys and just, I love that memory.
Yeah. That I mean, as an impressionable between the ages of 5 and 8 years old, 4 to 8 years old, being in that time frame, that was just magic. And I forgot to mention, I remember seeing on the news when I was very little and not really understanding the Cabbage Patch
Oh, I
Gate.
remember that.
Yeah.
I still remember that news craze where watching people run over each other to get a Cabbage Patch.
Mhm.
That
The
was,
next,
but in my head, I'm thinking, it's a freaking doll.
yeah,
That's not a toy.
yeah,
That's a doll.
yeah. I think the next one that I recalled was Teddy Ruxpin causing a big stir.
Dude, I wanted a Teddy Ruxpin. I'm not gonna lie. The
Not
little
me.
kid in me, I wanted a Teddy Ruxpin. But
That was an easy pass for me. I mean, at that point, so much had exploded, and
I wanted a Teddy Ruxpin to play a heavy metal tape inside him and to see if he would move his mouth that fast. That's what I wanted.
Seek and destroy.
That's what I wanted to do with mine. I didn't care about his stories. I just wanted to see what I could make him do.
Right. The kid that I knew that had one used to sit on his face and let him eat his butt out. It was really disgusting. It was
Oh my God.
a friend of my mom's, this little boy named Frankie, and he would sit on Teddy Ruxpin's mouth while it's wah 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 wah.
Oh gosh, can you imagine being that guy and like having forgot that memory and like stumbles on our podcast and he's like, "Steve,
dude, thank God nobody watches us." Oh man, yeah,
oh, gosh, that's funny. So do you have any memories like tied to songs? Like for me, like I guess it must have been when I picked up this action figure, but every time I hear Stevie Wonder's "I Just Called to Say I Love You," I think of Tripwire. Like that must have been the song that was playing in the car when I got the action figure, because that is like a weird connection that I make to that. But like I can't explain it any other way. Do you have some weird freaking memory that's like that?
I don't have songs connected to toys, but MTV was starting to become a thing, and my grandparents had cable, and when there were free cable trial periods, we would have it at my house. And like the anthem of my very early years was virtually anything from ZZ Top or Van Halen.
There you go.
I Can't Drive 55 by Sammy Hagar. I remember that one because I think he cut the head off of a Han Solo figure with a cigar guillotine. He's like dressed as a judge and talking about how they're going to throw the book at him for driving. And I think they put the Han Solo in and the guillotine chops the Han Solo's head off.
That's awesome.
There is a very specific one, and I never remembered the lyrics, but it was Electric Avenue.
Oh, yeah, by Eddie Grant.
We're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue.
That's a song that's connected with He-Man coloring books, because that's the song that would have on cross-country trips with my parents back to my grandma's house and coloring in my He-Man coloring books, rocking out to Eddie Grant and the Johnson.
Yeah. And I think at some point in the video, there's like a gold-colored Millennium Falcon that comes out of a toilet.
No way. I'm gonna have to go check that video out now.
Yeah, you should see it.
That's funny that you bring that one up, because that one is very distinctly tied to coloring in Masters of the Universe color books.
I liked one called TV Dinner, where it's talking about how awful the TV dinners are. And in the video, there's a monster that lives under the tinfoil in his TV dinner. It like reaches out over the top. MTV did a lot of weird crap.
Oh, they did. I know. That's back when they were good. So
yeah, up to that point, like cinema. Nope, there is one. The Superman song theme song from Superman the Motion Picture.
Oh yeah, but that
dude, I could not watch Superman without running out with a towel on my back into the yard and pretending to fly.
I did that over a coffee table. by the way.
Over what?
I pretended to be Superman over a coffee table, and that did not work out very well.
Oh,
But another movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
yeah.
Early
Yeah,
80s.
could never
That
find
name
the
was in my head
figures.
all the time.
Yeah, I love the movie. I wanted to be Indiana Jones, but
Oh, yeah.
I wanted toys, and I never even knew they existed until years after they were off the shelf.
Oh, yeah. But
So those,
anytime I got a hold of a rope, I pretended it was a whip. And I remember trying to wear my dad's stupid big cowboy hat to be Indiana Jones. Didn't look anything like his hat, but I wore it and still pretend. So
I used to find any kind of a rope or extension cord and wrap it around my neck. This is going somewhere, and it's not where you think, because this is back then, not now. But back then, I would reenact the scene from Clash of the Titans when Calibus
oh
had
yeah.
Perseus by the neck, and my grandpa had landscaping stakes, and they were like the perfect sword, right? They're just
There
this
you go.
pointed piece of pine that's sharpened at the end. And I would reenact that scene when you like, oh God, is Perseus gonna get his sword this time? It might be different. And he's like reaching through all the river rock and gravel to get it, and his hands are dirty, and he finally gets it, and he throws his sword into Calibus. I probably reenacted that for like hours.
That was a great
I'm
movie.
sure that my grandpa was looking out the back window going, what the hell? You know, like, it's done. This kid's lost.
But that's what we did back in the day. I mean, we didn't have DVDs. I don't even think VHS were a thing when we were a kid. So the only way we really had to relive these moments was to either have the coloring book, have a storybook that was written about it, or relive the whole damn thing in our head. That was pretty much it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, most of the time this stuff was coming on network TV. There weren't a lot of VCRs in the early 80s. So it was just like, if it was on, you get your ass in there and watch it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was no TiVo. You didn't record that stuff. TiVo, I still dated myself. But I mean, I don't even think we made it even into the late 80s. So maybe we can continue this conversation in another podcast.
I think so. I think we need to suspend this and pick up on part 2. So
yeah,
thank you everybody out there for joining us. When Doug and I were thinking about this earlier, we were like, well, maybe we can do a half hour on all of the 80s toys and what it meant to us. But as you can see, we've talked for like 28 minutes and 20 seconds. So
yeah,
I think what we'll probably do is just hang our hats up for this time and hope that you join us next time, because it gets a lot better.
It
and
does.
Sometimes there wasn't just a Star Wars or Transformers phase, there were multiple. So looking forward to having us back and further
we haven't
the
even
discussion.
got to the weird stuff yet.
It gets weirder than Teddy Ruxpin eating a kid's butt.
It gets way weirder.
Great. All right.
All right. See everybody.
So you look for Doug. Oh, yes. Bye-bye. Bye until next time.